Hello and welcome back to Underlab. Many of us have likely finished Undertale already, and many of us have likely seen the true Pacifist ending. For me, it's one of the most memorable moments in any video game I've played in recent years. While it may seem that things are mostly wrapped up, with the exception of a few mysteries and the unfortunate fate of a certain flower, how many of us picked up on what exactly the true Pacifist route was trying to tell us? I know I for one skirted around it for some time, as even though I always enjoyed the Pacifist route the most, I never felt the moral message was all that original. In fact, in my recent video on why Undertale is still loved, I admitted that I felt the morality aspect of the game was a little forced. In hindsight though, it depends on how you look at it, and I now feel there may be an even deeper message to Undertale that a lot of us missed. What exactly is this message? Well, grab some spider cider and a cinnamon bun, and let's find out. The vast majority of people rate Undertale very highly, as it's a game with few real flaws. However, one consistent criticism relates to the Pacifist path. While it's an extremely feel-good experience with some highly unexpected twists and turns along the way, such as the true laboratory, it does feel a little bit like a Disney film. Frisk is nice to everyone they meet, despite many of the monsters you encounter attempting to kill you the moment they see you. The ending itself is quite bittersweet, which prevents the game from being overly optimistic, as Asriel is destined to turn into Flowey once more, so Undertale encourages you to be nice to people who don't really deserve it. Where's the problem in that? Well, as I've discussed in previous videos, even as far back as my why the genocide path could be justified theory, we have to remember that the monsters in Undertale are actively trying to kill us. With the exception of Flowey and likely Sans, none of them know we can simply reload, so when they attack us with the intent of defeating us, to their knowledge they really did just kill us. This puts the monsters past the point of redemption. Or does it? The truth is, every major monster has a well-defined motive for attacking you, and the vast majority fear you. Before getting to the all-encompassing point I feel the true Pacifist route is trying to make, let's take a look at each of the characters in Undertale and explain why they do what they do. Upon entering the ruins for the first time, we meet Flowey. Flowey, as most of us likely know, isn't really a flower, but instead the remnants of Asriel's soul infused with a flower and a healthy dose of determination. In the world of Undertale, souls are responsible for your ability to feel empathy, the ability to care for others. As Flowey doesn't really have a soul of his own, he resorts to tormenting others in order to feel anything at all, with his overarching plan to become so powerful that he's the god of the underground, able to reset and torture his victims on an endless loop. What's important to remember about Flowey is that Flowey isn't really a character. He's the soulless husk of what was once Asriel, and Asriel is a compassionate, heroic character who by the end of the game is willing to sacrifice his own happiness in order to save everyone he loves. Flowey is like a strange reflection of the player then, or maybe just the polar opposite. Unlike Frisk, he has no real free will, and is destined to go down a path of destruction. We have the choice as to whether we commit to the pacifist, neutral or genocide routes. So when you think about it, should we actually choose to kill every monster we come across? That makes us far worse than Flowey. At least Flowey has the excuse of being incapable of escaping his inner demons. You may be wondering how this ties into the deeper message I'm trying to get at, but trust me when I say I think it will make more sense after going over each and every character. Note that each monster has flaws, for better or worse. The next major character we meet is Toriel, who makes for quite the contrast when compared with Flowey. Toriel is willing to look past the missteps of humanity, as she realises that each individual, whether monster or human, is different. She didn't want Asgore to go to war with humanity again, and was so repulsed by the idea that she left him when he decided that was the only choice he had left. Her flaw is in how she obsessively tries to keep you within the ruins for the sake of your safety. She's so loving that it actually clouds her judgment, making her believe that you have no chance whatsoever by your own past the door that she guards. Toriel therefore seems to represent the ability to forgive despite the terrible transgressions humans have made against monster kind. When you think about it, that's exactly what Frisk does on the true pacifist route. Despite attacking you without warning or reason, you give the monsters a chance, which is exactly what Toriel does for us at the beginning of the game. After exiting Toriel's home, we meet Sans and Papyrus. Sans is a very curious character as his backstory is shrouded in mystery. He has powers that can't really be explained, and he acts like the arbiter of morality at the end of the game. Sans is therefore somewhat like the player, though rather than being the protagonist of the story, he acts and judges in the background, only intervening if the player goes too far. He reminds me of Frisk on the pacifist path by finding it within himself to not attack you even when you kill Papyrus, if you haven't also killed everyone else. His commitment to the promise he made to Toriel proves that he does have a deeper understanding of morality morality than most characters found in Undertale. Unfortunately, Sans is also a nihilist, someone who believes life is pointless. He literally knows too much for his own good, as at least on the genocide path he realises that the player is in control of the timeline. That's why he seems so lazy, because deep down he believes, or rather knows, that he can't really do anything to stop you. On the genocide path, he's just so desperate to prevent you from going all the way that he tries his best despite his apprehensions. Sans' lethargy is pretty much the opposite of determination and has to be his greatest flaw. Papyrus, meanwhile, is pretty much the opposite of Sans. He's energetic and full of vigour, excited to capture his first human in order to impress Undyne. Where Sans is cool and relaxed, Papyrus seems constantly on edge, always trying to do his best. However, unlike Sans, Papyrus is pretty incompetent despite his enthusiasm, and he acts without thinking, trying to capture Frisk even when he realises that the human has done nothing wrong. While Sans is cold and mysterious, Papyrus is friendly and welcoming, trying to get to know the human despite perceiving them as their enemy. When put together, the two brothers would almost make up for each other's flaws, were they not so dysfunctional to begin with. Moving into Waterfall, we come across the cold-blooded predator that is Undyne. Undyne wants us dead solely because we're a human, though that doesn't really distinguish her from many of the monsters in Undertale. What makes her a cut above the rest is how determined she is when compared with other monsters. She's the only one who manages to keep fighting past death, even becoming a more powerful version of herself on the genocide path. Determination isn't something monsters are supposed to be able to retain, though that's a theory for another time. Regardless, it's clear that her desire to protect the innocent plays into why she's able to keep fighting even when she should surely perish. Knowing the threat that humanity poses to monsters, it's hard to not think that it's quite heroic of her to put her life on the line for the sake of others. Her flaw then is her inability to look past her prejudice. While she's not wrong in interpreting you as a threat, on the true pacifist route she has little justification for attacking you. The human can't afford to be as narrow-minded as Undyne when on the pacifist path. Alfea, meanwhile, is extremely open-minded, being perhaps the only monster in Undertale willing to actively help you reach the surface. Consider that Toriel tries to keep you locked within the ruins, and Sans tries to have as little influence as possible. That would make Alfea the most helpful and kind monster there is, were it not for the fact that she repeatedly sicks Metatron on you for the sake of creating false tension. She's always in control of the situation, though it still must be frightening for the young human to be attacked by a robot who they've been told wants them dead. This all ties into Alfea's weakness, which is her complete lack of social skills. She thinks the only way she'll be able to befriend you is by impressing you through repeatedly saving your life, though she's cautious not to put you in any situation where there's any real threat. On the true pacifist route, we have to talk to everyone we meet and get them to overcome their issues, Alfea's social anxiety being one of these. Maybe you can already see how this is building up to a deeper message. Metatron has free will, but it's not what Alfea initially tries to get us to believe. His desire for glamour and stardom is all-consuming, which leads to him attacking you for real against Alfea's wishes. He does have a heart though, as we see after his ratings reach 12,000, and various monsters call in order to explain how much they love his show. After realising how much his fans care about him, he decides that he'd rather stay and entertain them than abandon them and go to the surface. Metatron is therefore a more reasonable person than he first appears. He just became too wrapped up in his celebrity lifestyle. His flaw is his narcissism and egotism, because when we see past that part of his character, we realise he has as much empathy as anyone else in the underground. The last major character we meet is Asgore, the king of monsters. Asgore is an inherently flawed character from the get-go, as we know he's responsible for the second war of humanity. Of course, it wasn't a decision he made lightly. The barrier needs the equivalent of 7 human souls in order to destroy it, and there doesn't appear to be any getting around that. Did Asgore ever really have a choice? It's hard to say for sure. There are other approaches he could have taken, like Toriel mentions. If he had just taken one human soul, perhaps he could have ventured to the surface and claimed the souls of humans who are going to die anyhow. It's hard to say whether Asgore is really responsible for being in the awkward position where he had to make an extremely tough decision. For a character who we're led to resent and fear throughout the game, he probably has some of the most justification of anyone for his actions. That leads me into the hidden message of the true pacifist route. On the surface, the true pacifist route seems to make the extremely naive assumption that if you just treat everyone nicely, things will turn out well in the end. That doesn't seem very realistic, nor is it really fair considering the amount of times that monsters tried to kill Frisk. Why should the player forgive them for being so reckless and hateful? Well, perhaps that's not actually the point of the true pacifist route. At the end of the game, we can choose whether we actually want to hug and forgive Asriel. It isn't mandatory that we do, and we have control up until the very end. where we can choose whether we stay to live with Toriel or not. Once again, the recurring idea that we have a choice is being brought up. Don't forget how things are completely different on the genocide path, and our ability to choose is stolen from us. It seems that the point of the Pacifist route isn't to be nice purely for the sake of it, but to commit selfless acts, when if we were only a little more selfish, we could escape to the surface much faster. We could just cut through every monster we come across, or we could ignore their issues and not really care about saving them. After all, the only goal of Undertale is to escape the underground. Instead, we can choose to stick around a little longer in order to ensure a bright future for monster kind. Why did I bring up each character earlier then? Well, in a way, the player has to make up for each of the flaws the major characters have. Let me explain what I mean. Unlike Flowey, the human is able to choose. We have to use this power to do the right thing, when we could easily use it to benefit ourselves. We have to prove to Toriel that letting us go was the right thing to do, as it results in the barrier being shattered. We have to validate Sans in not attacking us by doing the right thing, and proving that he was right to listen to Toriel. Unlike Papyrus, we have to think before we act, as if we just do what we think is right there and then, we may come to regret it later on. Undyne attacks us because we're a human. We have to be the better person though, and not just attack monsters because they're monsters. Alfea is too afraid to express her true feelings to others, while Frisk has to unite monsters under the same banner. We have to remind Metatron that the people who truly care about him already live with him in the underground. Finally, we have to make sure that Asgore's decision wasn't in vain, and that the 6 human souls he collected are used for their ultimate purpose of destroying the barrier. The human has the ability to set everything right, and to improve everyone's lives. They also have the ability to kill everyone and everything, ruining the entire world. The hidden meaning of the true pacifist route is that with great power comes great responsibility. We can easily do whatever we want to do in Undertale, but if we want a result that actually improves the lives of the characters we meet, we have to go out of our way to help them. Therefore, I don't think the pacifist route is just about being a naive good guy because the story demands it. The game is aware of how powerful the player could be if they wanted to be. The moral of the pacifist route is to reject the temptation of being all-powerful, and instead to pursue the path of true righteousness, to do the right thing even when those we meet have done nothing to deserve it. Why? Because it turns out everyone in Undertale is simply misguided and confused, rather than being evil. Even the humans originally attacked the monsters out of fear, and now the monsters are just acting in kind. It takes a truly pure and noble soul such as Frisk in order to set things right once more, and to make up for centuries of hatred between two species. We have to save the world, because we're the only one who can. I can't help but feel that Frisk must be pretty superhuman for a child. This is just my interpretation of the pacifist route, though I do feel it makes sense. If you feel the pacifist route has a different moral, or symbolises something else, or if you agree with me, feel free to tell me in a comment. Maybe it's all secretly a spaghetti-induced delusion, dreamt up by Papyrus. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video. Try not to fall down any conspicuous holes on Mount Ebert, and I'll see you next time.